dramatic events of Jesus' last week are played out every year by Christians worldwide. There can be no doubt to the reality of his death by execution on a cross. Writings from the Bible, from Jewish literature, and from secular historians all explain how Jesus was put to death. All of them locate the events of the week leading to his death in Jerusalem, a city of fairly close quarters. It's helpful to understand the city in order to gain a clearer picture of the events of that Friday. The old city of Jerusalem is small in size. It is only about 1,100 yards east to west and slightly more than that north to south, so it all happened in fairly close quarters. To the east of the city is the Kidron Valley, separating Jerusalem from a ridge of hills a little higher in elevation than Jerusalem. Due east of the old city, that ridge is called the Mount of Olives. On the eastern side of that ridge is the village of Bethany, the home of Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, and the place where Jesus stayed every night until the Thursday night he was arrested. But let's back the events up a little and look at the timing of this story in a broader way. Jesus' home base was in the Galilee region, 75 miles or so to the north. He would travel fairly regularly down to Jerusalem. The Gospel of John records more of Jesus' activity in Jerusalem than any of the other Gospels. In John, we are told that in the fall, around October on our Western calendar, Jesus said, "Before Abraham was, I am." And he said this in the temple grounds in Jerusalem. Now, Abraham had lived about 1,800 years before Jesus, so that claim raised quite a reaction, and the religious leaders of the city tried to arrest him. He slipped away unharmed. Then, in December, a couple months later, Jesus said, "I and the Father are one," again evoking a powerful reaction from the religious leaders. This time, they attempted to stone Jesus to death. But again, he slipped away. Around the time of our January, Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead in Bethany, which, as we saw, is quite close to Jerusalem. From that time on, the religious leaders were convinced that they needed to put Jesus to death because he was gaining quite a following. It was shortly after that the Jewish leaders sent out word that they would arrest Jesus, although they were not planning on doing that during the feast of the Passover because the crowds got huge, and due to Jesus' popularity in Galilee, the potential for riot was large. What changed their minds and had Jesus arrested during the Passover is that one of Jesus' disciples, an insider, Judas, came to the leaders with an offer of delivering Jesus to them in secret, apart from the crowd. On Thursday, Jesus and his disciples walked into Jerusalem and ate the Passover meal together. Judas left that meal to get those who would return to arrest Jesus. But before they got back, Jesus went out of the old city of Jerusalem, crossed the Kidron Valley, and stopped at the base of the Mount of Olives, to a place where there was an olive press. In Hebrew, Gatzetim, or as we know it, Gethsemane. Twice in the last few months they had tried to arrest Jesus, and he left the city. This time, he could very easily have left again by simply crossing over the Mount of Olives and heading into the Judean wilderness. This time, though, he stopped, sensing that his Father had a different outcome planned. Judas guessed where to find them, knowing that when they came to Jerusalem from Galilee, they regularly went to the place where the olive press was in order to pray. After being identified by Judas and then arrested, Jesus went through a very long night. He was first taken to the home of the high priest Caiaphas. The Jewish leaders had decided to try to have Jesus executed by the Romans and not do the execution themselves, which would have been by stoning. So they needed to bring a charge against Jesus that would lead the Romans to see the need for his execution. Then, early on Friday morning, they took him to the council house, to the Jewish ruling council, so they could vote to recommend execution to the Roman prefect Pontius Pilate. Pilate's home was in Caesarea on the coast, but when he came to Jerusalem, he would stay in the palace built by Herod the Great, so that's where they took Jesus. Then, because Jesus was from Galilee, Pilate set the case of Jesus' crucifixion across the courtyard to Herod Antipas, the ruler of Galilee. He declined the offer and sent Jesus back to Pilate. There, under pressure from the Jewish leaders, Pilate capitulated to having Jesus crucified. Jesus' suffering was with real people in a real world. These are the principal players from Jesus' passion. This is the bone box of Caiaphas. It says right here his name, Yosef ben Caiaphas, Joseph, son of Caiaphas. And this is a dedicatory plaque by Pontius Pilate. He was dedicating it Tiberium. You can see his name here, Pontius and Pilatus. He was the Roman prefect, a military governor. Here is a bone box. This bone box is from Yohanan ben Hamakdol. And in this bone box was the only set of bones that we have found of someone who'd been crucified. Here is his heel bone. The nail was driven through the side of his heel. And underneath the head there was a piece of acacia wood. It served as a washer so the body would not pull off the nail. And underneath the bent tip was a piece of olive wood. Apparently his cross was made from an olive tree. Based on the length of the nail, it appears that Yohanan was nailed to the cross with his feet on either side of the vertical piece, which was called the stipes. Now, the purpose of crucifixion was not just to put someone to death, but to do it in such a way as to display the criminal, showing what happens to people like this. Those crucified might last for 2 days on a cross, but it was often shorter due to loss of blood or the beatings that took place before the actual crucifixion. By 3 p.m, Jesus had died. His body was taken down from the cross and buried. Of the tens of thousands of people who were crucified in this land, we only have the bones of one person, this heel bone of Yohanan. We would never even know of Jesus because we don't even know the rest of him. The only reason we know about Jesus is that he rose from the dead. He rose from the dead. And because of that, we know that his suffering, his passion, and his death was for a reason. It was God's way to give us forgiveness and to show us that his love will never leave us. So it's time to dive into the Word, do the study, and then we'll wrap up together.